Brave Companions, Portraits Through History by David McCullough, created by Laura Williams. This book draws portraits of influential people throughout history and specifically the conditions that brought them to be so influential. McCullough calls them a collection of essays, however each chapter carefully shows the risks in the adventure or the life of the individual. Once wanting to be a portrait artist, McCullough carefully portrays these characters in little-known light. Following Teddy Roosevelt's transformation into the rough Westerner, heroic actions of all characters, and even Harriet Beecher Stowe's writing of Uncle Tom's Cabin and her frustrations and issues, this book carefully follows these characters and focuses on key shaping events. Some of these individuals are not very well known to the average high school history student, from artists to marquises, but does a very good job of focusing in on their influence on other people who would later become more influential or their lasting effects. These people had a great influence in their time and often had greater influence on others, such as the role of many people in history, to be rarely named, but have held a profound effect on a certain event that would later change the world. McCullough draws a portrait of an individual who, while seemingly normal, all showed large feats of bravery in their lifetimes. These individuals would grow and prosper, and all would affect history in some way, even the brave workers who died at the Panama Canal. One critic called it, "The greatness of this book lies not just in the history that McCullough brings so vividly to life, but in the characters, some larger than life, others barely known, who all had their part in shaping this great country of ours." Other critics have highly praised this book, especially citing how well McCullough portrays his characters. One issue with this book, however, is how loosely the subjects connect together, showing how it is truly, as the author said, a collection of essays. This often leaves the reader wondering, how does everything relate? All of these characters share a common theme, however: brave and accomplished. They chased their dreams and pushed inventions, ideas, or gifts to the world, and changed their views. They all show the progression of history throughout time and are great examples of bravery. This book is organized into 5 sections: Phenomena, The Real West, Pioneers, Figures in a Landscape, and On We Go. This organization helped to group the events and figures together to prove the author's thesis, helping to avoid the confusion that would often come along with such a widespread collection of essays. This grouping allows us to draw connections within smaller groups to gain an even better understanding. With varying numbers of essays in each group, it is evident that these groupings have a purpose, with their titles giving hints to their unifying factors. Phenomena discussed overcoming challenges, The Real West discussed the growth of the West and the people who drew inspiration from there. Pioneers discussed new inventions and growth, such as the Panama Canal. Figures in a Landscape focused on people the author personally knew. And On We Go discusses our growth from our history up until now.
Drove she ducklings to the water,
created using how to.
Just at night.
Each chapter is organized in a similar fashion. The author tells a tale that is emphasized on the events that shaped and grew the individual or large historical landmarks. For example, in this section, I'm going to place specific focus on Remington, or Chapter 5 of this novel. Not to be confused with the type of gun. This artist was a writer, an illustrator, and a sculptor who focused on portraying the old Wild West, mainly drawing or painting in the late 19th century. His main subject matters were Native Americans and cowboys, much of what people imagine when they think of the old Wild West. This chapter discusses the growth and evolution of Remington, starting from when he first became popular and many junior editors had to redraw the many poorly drawn images that were submitted to the newspapers that circulated the images that Remington made so popular. From there, he also grew into one of the best painters of the time that made American art grow to be so individualistic. Before then, American art was merely emulating the European styles of the time, but Remington and many of the new schools of art that were emerging helped to shape a new style that would become part of our culture. McCullough also emphasizes the effect Remington's wife had on him, and how her support and love helped to shape him as an artist and shape his work profoundly. From his early paintings to his later ones, Remington's art shows great evolution as he grew into his style with great dedication and focus, bravely treading into new territory that had rarely been trodden upon by any artist before him. McCullough's portrayal of his artist growth focuses mainly on his growth to fame, as opposed to his art and the stylistic influence it had in the period. Staying true to his thesis, McCullough focuses on the subject's bravery and dedication, as well as influential turning points that molded his life to allow him to pursue his talent and shape American culture in such a way that he can be remembered centuries later. Each chapter focuses singularly on a subject, but all can easily be related back to the author's thesis of bravery and growth, showing how this collection of essays is so much more than simply a pile of essays, and instead a novel of a great persuasive weight.
I would say that if you look at American history, there are several themes that come through very clearly and consistently. One is the willingness to take risks. We are really founded on risk. The Revolutionary War was one of the most astonishing risks ever launched. Every new American who crossed the ocean, whether it was the Atlantic or the Pacific, was taking a terrific risk just coming here. And with risk, of course, went responsibility, but the risk was often, if not always, in an atmosphere of opportunity. Well, of course, they had to improvise and make do, and they were accustomed to preparing for the worst. Anybody who lived on a farm, let's say in New England, or people who had crossed into what was then the frontier of western Massachusetts or Pennsylvania or Kentucky, they had to know how to do a lot of things, and they had to take on individual responsibility to a degree that we're not accustomed to, which had to do with inability to get from one place to another rapidly. If Abigail Adams was going to decide whether to have her children inoculated for smallpox, because the smallpox epidemic was sweeping through Quincy, Massachusetts, and other neighboring Massachusetts towns, she couldn't pick up the phone and call her husband back in Philadelphia, down in Philadelphia at the Continental Congress, say, "You better come home. We've got to decide what to do," or "You better get on the next plane and be here." She had to make that decision herself, so that the inconveniences of transportation and communication, by our terms, weren't just a nuisance. They also developed a kind of self-reliance and a realistic understanding that you were you were going to be judged by, and you had to assume the responsibility of your own actions. And that's a very different kind of world. And it defeated a lot of people, but it also gave rise to some very strong kinds of integrity and ability to make do.
The author incorporated this idea of risk-taking into his novel. All of the chapters to some extent include a degree of bravery or risk-taking. This importance of risk-taking is heavily emphasized throughout the novel. There is also a unifying factor of bravery and how these characters utilize bravery to change history as a whole. McCullough proves his thesis that all of his characters are not only related through their contributions through history, by either helping shape many events that grew to be paramount to U.S. history, or by capturing these events and shaping their culture, by also emulating the characteristics of bravery and courage that allowed them to make these influential decisions. Much like Harriet Beecher Stowe's attitude and hardiness when faced with great issues in life, all of these characters worked hard to help shape American history, even those who died in the process, like many workers who died in the process of building the Panama Canal. McCullough even discusses Washington, D.C. and its growth, and while seemingly completely unrelated, it also ties into this aspect of bravery, and discusses how it came to be and the brave souls who helped to shape it. Even though many of these people are little known, isn't it the common person that helps place events into swing and overall have greater impacts than certain people in the right place at the right time? Isn't that what history really is? Overall, I think McCullough proved his thesis very well and made a book that was enjoyable to read as he painted the lives of the many people that starred in this very interesting novel. Thanks for watching!
created using Powtoon.